I'm offering a new report called The Houses of Life. And this report evaluates and explains each of your 12 houses and each subtopic of each house. So let's talk a bit and let me share some of the techniques and systems that drive this unique report. Before we can evaluate any house, we have to first go through and evaluate each planet. Because the planets own the houses, they use the houses and they maintain the houses, so the conditions of the planet is very, very instrumental in understanding the conditions of the houses. The first thing to do is to explain how to basically evaluate the planets in terms of how they function. This video is going to be explaining the topic of functional benefics and functional malefics. This phraseology is very confusing. There's a concept of planets being tough or gentle inherent to them. So for example, Venus and Jupiter are quite gentle or benefic, whereas Saturn and Mars are quite harsh or malefic. But in addition to that intrinsic nature, planets also have acquired nature based on circumstances. And that's what is meant by this term functional. How do they function? It means circumstantially. So the idea is, depending upon the ascendant, then the planets become lords of various houses relative to that. So therefore each planet functions as a different house lord per each ascendant, and we need to evaluate that first to understand how the planets interact with the houses. So the objective here is to measure the functional beneficence versus the functional maleficence of each planet. So to measure things, we'll use numbers. So we're going to quantify how functionally good or bad a planet is per the ascendant. So here are the rules for how we're going to do this quantification, or how we're going to measure the functional nature of a planet. There's 4 simple rules. The first rule is this: if this planet is the lord of the first house, it's as benefic as it can possibly be, and you skip all the other rules. By the way, all these rules are from the 15th chapter of Paladipika, verbatim. So the lord of the first house is always going to be the most functionally benefic planet for that ascendant. So this means that for a Capricorn ascendant, Saturn is the best planet. For an Aries ascendant, Mars is the best planet. Yeah, Saturn is the malefic planet and Mars is the malefic planet, but when they own the rising sign, they function well for that chart because they maintain the first house, which is the basis of the whole chart. So what this actually winds up doing is creates an interesting phenomenon, is that ascendants or rising signs which are owned by malefic planets actually get a bit of a head start in being able to produce a native who's more powerful or dominant or more fortunate. Because what happens is, by skipping all the rest of the rules, you remove a malefic from the equation. So for example, for a Capricorn ascendant, Saturn becomes the best planet. And that's a pretty good thing to have. So that's an interesting byproduct of this system of functionality. So first rule, simple. If it's lord of the first house, you give it +3 and you're done. Now what if it's not the lord of the first house? Then you look at the second rule and you ask, is this planet the lord of a trine? Which means, is it the lord of house 5, 9, or 1? But 1 is redundant. We already looked at 1. So really, is it the lord of 5 or 9? Now, how do we score it? If the planet is a lord of 5 or 9, it's a lord of 5 or 9 if its sign is the 5th or the 9th sign from the rising sign. So if it's the lord of the trine, the planet will either get a +2 or a +1, depending on which type of sign is the trine. If it's a mule tricone sign, or if it's just a regular domicile sign. If it's a mule tricone sign, then it's +2. And if it's a regular domicile, then it's +1. So first of all, what's a mule tricona sign? The mul tricona is the mula means root or the base, the foundation. So this is the sign which is the base from which the planet gets its strength. So it's the more strong or dominant sign of the two that the planet usually owns. And the simple rule for the mul tricona is that it's the male sign. Every planet owns a male and a female sign, almost every planet. And so the male one is called the mula sign, and the other one is just the regular domicile. Because the male is the foundation, the provider of stability and muscle and strength. There are two exceptions to the rule. So basically the rule is simple. Does the male sign own a trine? If so, it's +2. Does the female sign own a trine? If so, it's +1. But the two exceptions to the rule are Moon and Mercury. Moon doesn't own a male sign. So we consider its exaltation sign, Taurus, to be the root. And then Mercury is also an exception because Mercury it gets more strength from femininity. All right? So the rule so far is simple. Is this planet the lord of the first house? +3, you're done. If not, is it the lord of a trine? If yes, it's going to be +2 or +1. Next consideration, this would not be skipped. If you go down to rule 2, you're always going to go to 3 and 4 as well. You don't stop. So the third rule is this planet the lord of a dustana? Now, dustana means 6, 8, and 12. Those three houses. So really, there's 5, 9, and 1 are good houses to own, and 6, 8, and 12 are bad houses to own. If it's the lord of dustana, the scoring is exactly the same as if it's this lord of a trine, except they're negative numbers. So if it's a regular lord of a dustana, it's -1, or if the mul tricon sign is the dustana, then it's -2. And then finally, now that you have the circumstantial nature of the planet, you also add in the inherent or the fundamental nature of the planet. So this will be a +1 or a -1 based on whether the planet is inherently benefic or inherently malefic, and only consider the extreme benefics and malefics. So in other words, only Venus and Jupiter get a +1 for being inherently benefic, and only Mars and Saturn get a -1. So those are the simple rules, really. And this is a simple rule that lets you understand how planets function per each ascendant. So let me walk you through 4 different ascendants to get you used to what this rule actually means in practice. So first, let's look at Aries. For Aries, the first lord is Mars. So Mars is a +3, and that's the end. Then we look and see the trines. What are the 2 trines? The 5th house and the 9th house. One is Leo and one is Sagittarius. So Jupiter, who owns Sagittarius, and the Sun, who owns Leo, are going to get a bonus for the fact that they own trines. Now, both of these signs are male, right? So they're both going to be the mula sign for the planet. So they both get a bonus of 2 +2. Both Jupiter and Sun get a +2. Those are the 2 trines, so there's no other planet that owns a trine. Then we can check the dustanas. For the dustanas, it's Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter that own the 6th, 8th, and 12th house, respectively: Virgo, Scorpio, and Pisces. So Virgo is Mercury's mula sign, so this gets a -2 for Mercury. Scorpio is Mars' sign, so we don't care that it's a dustana because Mars is the first lord. And even if the first lord is lord of a dustana, it's not marred by that. It's still a +3. And Jupiter, it's not the mula sign, so it's a -1 instead of a -2. So this is interesting. The planet can own both a trine and a dustana, and that has to be considered side by side. Finally, we'll consider the inherent nature. So Venus and Jupiter will get a +1, and Mars and Saturn will get a -1, but the -1 doesn't affect Mars because Mars is the first lord. So all things considered, for the Aries ascendant, we come up with this tally. That Sun is a +2, Moon is a 0, Mercury is a -2, Venus is a 1, Mars is a +3, Jupiter a +2, and Saturn a -1. This is a quantification of how functionally good or bad these planets are for the Aries ascendant. Once you know this, then you can evaluate the houses that are in an Aries ascending chart. Makes sense? So Mars is very, very beneficial for the Aries chart. whereas Mercury is the most troublesome. All right, here's the next example, Cancer ascendant. So first lord is the moon. Moon gets +3. The trines are Scorpio and Pisces, neither of which is a Mula sign. They're both female. So nobody gets a +2, but the owner of Scorpio, Mars, will get a +1 for owning a trine, and the owner of Pisces will get a +1. Jupiter will get a +1. Then let's look at the Dustanas. 6, 8, and 12 is Sagittarius, Aquarius, and Gemini. So Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury are up. Are any of these 3 signs Mula signs? Sagittarius and Aquarius are. So the owner of Sagittarius and Aquarius, Jupiter and Saturn, will get -2 for owning Dustanas, whereas Mercury will get a -1 for owning the Dustana. Then you add in the inherent nature of each planet and you come up with the total. So you see for a Cancer ascendant, the moon, of course, is the most benefic planet functionally for the chart, and Saturn is the worst. And the rest is in a small range in between. Now I'll show you how to apply the rule to the Capricorn ascendant. First lord, Saturn, +3, and you're done. The trines are Taurus and Virgo, 5th and 9th house. So that means the moon is going to get +2 because Taurus is the moon's mule tricone. And then the other sign is Virgo. That's Mercury's mule tricone. So moon and Mercury are going to get +2 for owning the trines. Now for the Dustanas, that's Gemini, Leo, and Sagittarius. So we have 2 Mula signs, the one for the Sun, Leo, and the one for Jupiter, Sagittarius. So Sun and Jupiter are going to get a -2 for owning Dustanas, and Mercury is going to get a -1. Add the inherent nature, but we don't care about Saturn's inherent nature because it's the first lord, and you come up with the totals. And you can see Saturn is really the most beneficial, and then Sun is the worst for a Capricorn ascendant. And the moon is powerfully good as well. And one final example, just to drill this rule into your head and make sure you understand it. For a Sagittarian ascendant, first lord is Jupiter. The trines are Aries and Leo. Those are 2 trichonas. So the owner of Aries, Mars, and the owner of Leo, Sun, are going to get +2 for owning trines. Then the Dustanas 6, 8, and 12 is Taurus, Moon, and Scorpio. This is very interesting. So Taurus is the mule tricone for the moon. So the moon is going to get -2 for owning a Dustana. But the moon's other sign, Cancer, like the main sign of the moon, Cancer, also is a Dustana. But since we already gave it -2, it's an or situation. It's either the mule tricone or the own sign. This is how I'm interpreting the rule and using it. Maybe it could be interpreted a different way. Maybe it could be interpreted that the moon should get a -2 for Taurus and a -1 for Cancer, but that's not how I'm doing it. And then you have Scorpio, Mars, as the ruler of the 12th house, not a tricona, gets a -1. So Mars is an interesting situation for Sagittarius because its tricona is a trine, but its other sign is a Dustana. So when you add everything together, you get the Sun being quite good for Sagittarian ascendant, Moon being quite difficult, everything else being kind of neutral, and Jupiter, of course, the first lord, being quite good, being the best. I hope this helped you better understand at least one of the techniques and systems that's involved in this great new report of mine, the Houses of Life. If you want to see how these things come together for you, then go to victakara.com/H and order your own report today. Thanks very much.